Two, one. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Childcare Director's Chair podcast. I'm your host, Erica Saccoccio, and I always find the most amazing guests for our show, and today is no exception. I am joined with Mr. Schoolhouse. I'm going to give you a little bit background of what I know about this gentleman. I was very lucky to be a guest on his podcast. We had such a great time. He was so intriguing to me that I had to have him come on our show. He is extremely smart. He is a school student. He also was a substitute teacher and has a very brilliant future coming up for him. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on your show today.
So tell folks a little bit about what brought you into this field.
So one of the biggest things that stuck out to me about education is that, I come from very humble beginnings, right? And honestly, I was at a point in my life in middle school where I did not have much hope or a future. Where I come from in my neighborhood, people really didn't visualize, becoming educators, doctors, lawyers, or entrepreneurs. Like those things weren't talked about. The biggest thing it was you were celebrated for being bad. Like that you got an honor of badge. You got a badge of honor. That's what I meant to say. A badge of
Mm-hmm.
honor for being disrespectful, being rude, and it seemed like they just that culture was celebrated, and I failed my test. It was my math test. Um, at the time I was in eighth grade, I had to pass the math test to get to high school. And so at the time I was attending a church, and this teacher, he would come to my neighborhood. Mind you, he would come to my neighborhood on his summer break, and he would tutor me in math. That was my weakest subject at the time. And so we would sit every day um working on math, and I end up passing. And of course I'm here now, I'm in college, so I eventually, I eventually finished middle school. And so that attracted me to say, man, I want to make a difference in somebody else's life in that capacity at that level. And so that attracted me the most, just to see how caring and compassionate he was, and for him to tutor me on summer break, and he wasn't getting paid for it. My parents didn't pay him anything. He genuinely did it from the bottom of his heart. And so I said I want to be able to do the same in education as well.
Yeah. And so you are focused on becoming a school psychologist.
Yes.
And so before we hit that play button, you really touched upon how that course of study gives you a little bit in each area. It really allows you to kind of branch out. So what is so far what has been the most interesting to you?
Wait, can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. So prior to us recording, you had said that you really liked school psychology because there were so many different avenues that you really could branch out in your career.
Right.
What is your favorite part so far?
Just now, mind you, just based off research, of what I've just read about, becoming a school psychology, I love the fact that they work on the mental side of things with students. Because here's the thing, I believe that emotions drives behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're not good emotionally, how can you expect a student or anyone, let alone to be successful academically? They have to be able to regulate their emotions in an effective way. And I said to myself, well, being a school psychologist, I'll be able to leverage that and use that to help students to manage their emotions. So in my personal opinion, I think that that's the most attractive thing about being a school psychologist, is to be able to help students with their mental state of mind.
Yeah, and I think, as you had mentioned before, like a lot of teachers have been leaving the field, and we there's a lot of talk about burnout and stress, and a lot of that I think attributes to some of the behaviors that we're seeing in classrooms. right? A
Mhm.
lot of teachers are really struggling with that, and some of these behaviors, although we've always had behaviors in classrooms, not to the number and the frequency that we're having now. So I think that the field that you're really going into is going to be one that's going to be continually needed, and not just for the children, because when you help the children regulate and are able to, as you said, make it through the day in a way that feels good, and they're active and engaged and happy, then you'll have those less behaviors, but the teachers also will be less stressed and be able to do their job and role as a teacher and teach. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So talk to me a little bit about emotional intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I kind of came across this concept a couple of months ago, like just really kind of diving into it and understanding how important it is, right? So I know that Daniel Goleman was one of the pioneers of emotional intelligence. He was the one that made it very popular. But a guy named Peter, I'm not sure if his last name, but he was the president at Yale. But he's the pioneer of emotional intelligence. And I said to myself, well, students don't just they're not the only ones in this education ecosystem that needs emotional intelligence. You made a great point. Teachers educators need emotional intelligence. It doesn't matter what position you are in education. Educators need emotional intelligence. Parents need emotional intelligence, right? There's a difference between emotional intelligence and social emotional learning. Or social emotional learning is more so, on the lens of providing emotional support, teaching social emotional learning to students. But when we talk about emotional intelligence, it's more of like a broad way of things. So that's how Daniel Goleman defines it. He defines social emotional learning. He's the one that coined that term for children. But I said, man, what good does it really do if students are walking away with these skills to be better equipped emotionally, but the teachers don't have the tools to regulate their own emotions? Who's teaching them? Right? When I sub at different schools, or when I used to work for a nonprofit organization that they based their whole curriculum on social emotional learning. So we were teaching the children social emotional learning, right? But what about the other staff? Like it was rare, but we can't neglect that because teachers are humans, educators are humans, and they have challenging times, right? 80% of our negative thought, 80% of our thoughts are negative. So if 80% of our thoughts are negative, that means everybody needs emotional intelligence. And so, I mean, that's just a glimpse of like what I know so far, but I really do believe that emotional intelligence is the key to a successful education, especially when we talk about, helping the whole education ecosystem. Everyone in that ecosystem needs emotional intelligence for it to be able to flow effectively.
Yeah, and I love to, like, you currently work as a sub in middle school and elementary school. And I think that middle school's so tough. Like middle school, so many things are changing for those students. So have you been able to take what you've learned so far in your classes and start to implement, in classrooms?
So I feel like what I've learned so far, I feel like yes, it's taught me to have a little bit more empathy. So, for example, when a student is upset or angry or they get upset with another student, I don't yell at that student. I don't get mad at that student. Recently, there was and I was subbing at a school recently, and it was an altercation where they almost got into a fight, right? A physical fight. So I said, you just need a break. You need a break from everybody else. So you're not in trouble. I just want you to step outside. And one of the students asked to comfort her. I said, of course you can comfort her in this time of need. Of course you can love up on her and provide her some encouraging words because her emotions are high, So I think that I've been able to kind of approach behavior a little bit different, and not saying that they can just do whatever they want, but understanding that they're human. So I don't want to just penalize them for minor issues. It's obvious that you're upset. So just step outside and someone will be there to comfort you and love up on you. So when I as a substitute, when I tell students, I don't believe in telling them there it's a timeout. They think they're in timeout. They think they're in trouble, but I have to reprogram their minds and let them
Mm.
know you're not in trouble. You just need an emotional break. You're stressed. You're upset. You're frustrated. You're angry. So how can you operate and still focus on your academics and it's obvious that your emotions are very high right now. You just need some time to relax. And so I have to kind of like break down those barriers of saying you're not in timeout, that you really just need an emotional break. And then they're able to come back and they're fine in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And what you're speaking to right now, many of the administrators who are listening to this podcast are like, "Yep, we know," because this is something that we often talk about, and there's like some frustration in education because that is exactly what happens 95% of the time when a teacher sends a child to my office. We're gonna take a break and we're gonna get to the root of the problem, but I have to get that child to a place where we can even talk, where things make sense, they think, oh, they just send them and it's time out. I'm like, it's more time in. Like, I'm going to invest my time
Mm.
talking with that child, and so that's really essentially, the way that you frame it. And it doesn't always have to be an adult, like you said. It could be it could be a child, it could be anybody. So, what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be for folks that are trying to implement emotional intelligence in their classroom, but they haven't been properly trained, or they're just, maybe not open to it? What do you think their biggest challenges will be?
Well, yes, sir. I want to make sure I get your question right. You're
Sure.
asking what do I think will be the biggest challenge of implementing emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence?
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue is putting emphasis on educators not being trained to do emotional intelligence, right? And this is just speaking from experience of what I've seen. My first major was elementary education. When I glanced at the curriculum, the classes to be a teacher, there was nowhere on that curriculum where I saw we will be learning about emotional intelligence, right? We will learn how to regulate our emotions. So it's going to be very challenged if teachers are trying to train parents or train families and students on emotional intelligence if they're not practicing it in their daily lives. See,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence is not just a concept and ideology of saying, hey, look, we're trying to move the needle academically to help students, but this is a concept that can change your life personally, right? There's so many issues that happen outside the classroom that teacher that's human that deals with their family and everything else. So if they're not practicing it eternally on their own, then it's going to be hard to bring that passion and that energy that they need for people to really understand what it really means to practice this concept of emotional intelligence. So I think that's where the biggest issue is going to lie if they're not trained or even know what that looks like for them personally.
Yeah. I think too, when you think about, as a sub, you have the opportunity to go to different schools. Do you find that the way that the leadership runs the school, or the culture of the schools that you work at, do you find that that varies from building to building, or do you find that leadership matters in terms of the way that they roll these things out?
Man, I think leadership is so important. I know that leadership seems to vary a little bit, depending on the school that I go to, but I definitely do think that leadership sets the tone, right? They set the tone for the school, for the culture and how it's ran. So if I'm going to a school and it's chaotic and it's crazy, then likely the leadership it reflects the leadership, right? It was
Yeah.
a school I went to maybe about a year ago, and you know the students were saying that the principal never comes out their office. They only saw the principal one time, and
Mm.
I said, of course, this school is chaos the way that it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It was a crazy school, but it made sense if the leadership is not present, then
Yeah.
your school is only going to go so far. Like people are looking up to these people as leaders to set the tone. So yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think too that's something that the folks who are listening to this podcast really should take a self inventory and really think about not only how frequently are you getting out of your office, but how you're making meaningful connections with your parents, your students, your staff, and being able to be able to have your finger on the pulse, I guess, would be what I would say. Because again, emotionally intelligence isn't just the students, it's everybody. Being aware of how everybody is feeling, how we impact that is important. And like you said, like a lot of people will get out of bed in the day, and there's 80% you said of negative thoughts, right? And the leaders too are also human. So sometimes the leader might need someone to check in on them. I've met plenty of directors and owners right now who are really struggling right now for multiple reasons, but they're really struggling too. So I think if everybody, the culture, if everybody is focused on making sure everybody's okay and checking in where people are at, and how can I help you? What do you need? Really, then you have a thriving community.
That's
Yeah,
very true. It's a whole system working together. That's so true for
yeah.
sure.
So, where do you see your podcast going, and then in the next year or two? Where do you see that going?
In terms of the podcast right now, I don't have any super big goals, right? I think I just want to continue to interview people who are, making a difference in the field of education, and hopefully that my audience will continue to receive that information, and hopefully be able to just build some meaningful relationships outside of the podcast, and hopefully be able to collaborate with other school leaders that want to make a difference in education.
Yeah. When you connect with school leaders, what do you hope they get from their connection with you? What do you hope you bring to their, either to their schools, to them individually? What do you hope to give them?
My biggest thing is I hope to let them know that I'm coming from a genuine place, and it's not just monetary. Like this is work that means a lot to me. So when I come, I'm bringing in a different level of passion. And the second thing is that passion that I mean, the first thing is the love, the passion, but it's also solving the problem,
Yeah.
right? I want school leaders to know that when you collaborate with me, when you work with me, that I can solve a problem. Like emotional intelligence, it solves so many problems because if you are healthy, if you are in a good state of mind, of course, your students are going to do well. If you have a culture where emotional intelligence is at the center, of course, teachers are going to be encouraged. Why? Because
Yeah.
as a school leader, you're valuing their mental health. You're showing that you have empathy. You're showing that you're caring. And it's not just about test scores, but you actually care about the human being. You actually care about the person that's teaching this content, right? But that's emotional intelligence, having the ability to manage your emotions. So I think that, one, of course, the passion, the love and the care for the field, but two, I actually solve a problem. And I think that emotional intelligence is a solution to a lot of issues that our education system have.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to share with the audience that I haven't asked you so far?
Hmm. Anything? That's a really good question. Um, wow. I've never been asked that before. That's how you know you a pro. Oh man.
Well, I'll give you a minute to think on that. Let me ask you a different question. What is it like to work as a male educator in a woman dominated field? What is that like?
Ah, it's
He's like, I
weird.
thought you were going to make these easier, Erica.
No, these are good questions. No, I think it's it's kind of weird at times, because it's like it's so many women that's in the field, And sometimes I can feel out of place. I can feel like I'm not in a manly profession at times because they're mainly women. So it can I feel weird, kind of out of place at times. I mean, I do see guys that are in the field, but
Mhm.
most of the time they're teachers. Um I mean, most of the time, no, sorry, most of the time they're PE coaches
Mhm.
and they're usually school leaders, right? And I think that's a
Yes.
reason. That's a reason why they're school leaders, and a lot of them are not teachers. So I don't really see the school leaders like that when I'm subbing. I'm just in there for a day, and I'm out. So I could feel out of place at times.
I ask you that for my own selfish reasons. So I ask you that because I feel, and we work with different age groups, but I work with early childhood, and I would love to see more male figures join the education field. So that's
Mm,
why I ask, because I want to know as a leader, what can I do to help support young folks like you are coming into the field, because we need new teachers coming in and new professionals coming into education, right? And
yeah,
so how, I guess I ask you that because I want people to think on that. Like, are we making education welcoming? How can we support or and even try to get people to consider it as a field, or a career, and so that has been a challenge for many childcare centers or
yeah,
even elementary, right? I mean, teachers are leaving, new folks are coming in, and I'd like to see some more diversity
yeah,
in
sure.
education, right? So yeah, so that's why I asked for my own selfish reason.
Hmm,
All
mm,
right, we're gonna go back to
hmm.
one thing that you would love to leave the audience with that I didn't ask you.
I definitely want to piggyback on
Yeah.
one of the things you said about recruiting male teachers
Hmm.
before I answer that question if you don't mind.
Sure.
I will like to say is that, culturally speaking, men are the leaders of the household, right? So in a lot of cases, men are the providers, right? So in a lot teachers, we all know they don't make a whole lot of money, right? So that can discourage men, just speaking from a man perspective, that can discourage men from wanting to be teachers, right? So I think it's showing male teachers that there's growth, right? That's why you see when I go to different schools, just off my experience, I see more males as principals, and that's because principals get paid more.
Hmm.
They get paid a good amount of money,
Sure.
especially superintendents, and then you work your way up to the school district. So I guess, just from seeing that, realizing that, hey, a teacher, you might come in, and it varies. I'm just going to give an example. You making
Sure.
$60,000 a year, but if you continue to grow and prosper and get more credentials and certifications, it's possible you can definitely be a high six-figure earner and make more because, I mean, this is great work, but at the same time, men have to provide and they're looking for their husband, to be that leader financially. So I think that promising growth, like even if you can't say, hey, you might not be able to start off with the highest salary, but if you keep at it, you definitely can see that growth financially. So I think that's one way to recruit males to want to be in the field more, promising them career growth. Because that's the thing, like when people think about education, they just say there's no money, but that's a myth. I
Yeah.
did my research. That was one of the things that attracted me, is that you can actually grow in this field. That is a myth. Principals, and I would say principals, some principals are getting paid six figures easy,
Hmm.
with a master's degree. So it's like getting to the root of, hey, that's a myth. Don't believe that there's no money in education. And I'm not saying it's all about the money, but
Hmm.
people still have to make a living as well. So that's a
Sure.
important piece.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things said there, but what I'll say is the bottom line is teachers should get paid more, men
Right.
or women, right?
Right.
I
Right.
would just say, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Def-
I'm the breadwinner in my family, honey. My husband stays home and does the laundry, so we'll leave it at that. But the point is, teachers should make more money. Anybody in education should make more money. And yeah, we do need to make compensation packages more robust and benefits all the way around for everybody in education.
for
I do
sure.
agree with that, but you probably there probably is some truth to what you're saying in terms of a family's got to make ends meet, and whoever has the credentials to move forward usually takes the lead on that. So,
Hmm.
but we need, I think as a society we need more men in education.
For sure.
But that's my perspective. I think more diversity across. So give us a fun fact about you.
A fun fact about
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Um, I like to work out. I love to work out. That's an interesting thing about me. I'm very goofy, very silly. I like to play around a lot. I randomly dance and randomly sing at times. So I mean that's a fun fact about me that
yeah,
I'm just a happy person.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
enjoy life, man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing your story, because I feel like those are the folks that go the furthest, is
Mm,
those who aren't afraid to share their story, who don't have to pretend they know everything. I don't know everything. You don't need to be a know-it-all, right? Share your
right.
story, because somebody when you share that authenticity, people are going to connect. So, with that being said, tell folks about your podcast, where they can find out a little bit more about you, and and then also you're looking to be on other podcasts as well, so do your thing.
Okay. So you can find me on all platforms at Mr. Schoolhouse, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all social media platforms. You can find me at Mr. Schoolhouse, and you can also find me on all streaming platforms, the Schoolhouse Podcast. And if you have a podcast out there, I would love to be on your show to add value and add some energy. So if you're looking to do that, please reach out to me on all social media platforms. My email is the schoolhouse podcast at gmail.com.
I got lots of friends to connect you with. You are a wonderful young man. I cannot wait to help you out. For those of you who are tuned in today, thank you so much. As always, remember it's the small details that make a big impact in the success of your childcare business. And don't forget to check out my guys' podcast. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye bye.
Ugh, I'm so